If you've ever stared at a map so old the paper felt like it might crumble under your breath, you know how silence can start sounding like questions. That was Daniel Carter's first mistake, trying to breathe quietly enough that the past wouldn't notice him. He was 24, all-pressed shirt and restless eyes, the kind of heir headline writers love because it fits neatly under a photo of a tuxedo. But that afternoon, he was alone in a side room at the Carter Springwood Foundation's community center. No red carpet, no gala lighting, just a table, a half-drunk coffee going cold, and a sheet of brittle parchment covered in symbols that didn't care who his grandfather had been. A small shadow moved across the threshold, then a voice, bright and certain, "You're holding it upside down." He looked up. A girl, 10, maybe 11, was standing with a plastic library card, lanyard, and a ponytail that refused to behave. Her name tag read, Lily. She stepped closer without asking permission, like the room belonged to her too. Maybe it did. The community center was her second home, the one place in town that didn't look surprised when she asked hard questions. "It's not a regular map," she said, tapping a finger near a faded compass rose. "The north is rotated. See the lighthouse mark? It matches the bay, but only if you flip it along the diagonal. Like this. The ponce yourself too." She lifted the corner of the parchment with a gentleness that felt like respect, not fear, and for a second, he saw it, the mischief of geometry settling into place. The symbols rearranged themselves, the lines making a kind of sense that had been hiding in plain sight. "I've been working on it." Daniel cleared his throat, the words sounding both too formal and not careful enough. Lily grinned, and then she noticed the insignia on his cufflink, the tiny C with a wreath. "You're a Carter," she said, matter of fact. "Like Carter Carter?" "Like Carter Carter," he agreed, because in this town, people didn't say, "Your grandfather." They said the legend, like it was a street name or the weather. She studied the parchment again. "Where did you get this?" Daniel hesitated. The short answer was a safety deposit box. The longer one involved a lawyer with a voice like dried leaves, a sealed envelope marked, "For Daniel, when he's ready," and the strange ache of reading a dead man's handwriting. It was in a packet, old papers, letters. Some of it had to do with the Carter Springwood Foundation. Some of it didn't. "Does it have a key?" Lily asked. He blinked. "A key?" And to the siden was of restive rated. "And how long side is? The Macon Benner." He last Kivalis 1/4 side. Confession. He wanted a life of the new many. The many for the life the side. He would better. She pointed to a small symbol that reappeared along the margins, a sketched shape that looked like a key, but when he tried matching it to any lock he could think of, nothing fit. "This." She traced the symbol. It might not be a literal key, could be a marker, or a way of counting. Sometimes a key isn't for a door, it's for a story. Daniel wondered how long she'd been decoding stories for other people. "I should take a picture," she said, already fishing a cheap phone from her hoodie pocket. "Not to post." She said that with a teasing smile, like she was familiar with the rules rich people thought they needed. "To trace it. Digital helps. You can flip layers. Here seems the symptoms to consit, even flest, seems of the filament of a lowness, seems of the lowness. You're very sure of yourself," he said. "Someone has to be." The smile softened. "Is that coffee cold? You shouldn't drink it." "My mom says cold coffee tastes like excuses." He almost laughed. "What does hot coffee taste like?" "Decisions." He didn't realize he'd been waiting for a permission slip until that moment. He picked up the cup, tossed it in the bin, and when he looked back, Lily had already found a clean sheet of paper and a pencil. "So," she said, "we have a rotated north, a lighthouse, and a pseudo key. What are we missing?" "A reason," he said, "why any of this was left for me." Her eyes did something quietly kind. "Maybe because you're the one who would listen." He stayed. They started with the obvious landmarks, the bay's curve, the old wharf that the town still called wharf, even though half of it had fallen into the water, and the silhouette of the lighthouse out past the point, a white column that didn't blink anymore. The map's lines didn't match any current survey. They matched memories, guesses, and something like a scavenger hunt. Lily drew a light grid, not to correct the old lines but to respect their stubbornness. She layered the key symbol each time it appeared, and it made an unexpected pattern like a constellation leaning toward the shoreline. "Have you told anyone else you have this?" she asked without looking up. "Not yet. He have not aver the 7, he said of the chowns barely present. A question that is forthium. You should tell someone," she said, then added, "someone who won't try to keep it." She said it like a fact she had learned the hard way. He thought of a short list of people. Sarah came to mind first, Sarah Winters, who kept the Foundation's books with the steadiness of a lighthouse keeper's heartbeat. She'd known him since he was the teenager with a skateboard in a building full of framed grants. She'd also known his grandfather, which meant she knew what secrets cost. And then there was Maxwell. Maxwell Burke had been a name in his grandfather's inner circle long before Daniel was born. On paper, he was a family friend. In reality, Daniel had never decided where to put him. "Maybe, Sarah," Daniel said aloud. "Maybe later." "Later is a word adults use when they're about to do the opposite," Lily said. It didn't sound like bitterness. It sounded like experience. She lined up her tracing with the map again. "We should go look." "Now?" She shrugged like time had always been hers to spend carefully. "Before the tide." He glanced at the window. Outside, the bay was a slate color that meant the day hadn't made up its mind. He checked his phone, 3 missed calls from numbers. His assistant would label important if he had an assistant today. He was supposed to be on a video call about foundation board appointments in 40 minutes. He was supposed to be in a tux tomorrow night, saying something both humble and confident about legacy. He was supposed to be many things that didn't include rubber soles slipping on seaweed. "Let me at least text someone," he said. "Text Sarah," Lily said instantly. "Tell her you're going to the old wharf. If she texts back a frowny face, you can bail." "Do grown-ups bail for frowny faces?" "They should." He typed a short note to Sarah anyway, because Lily's certainty made all other plans seem like they belonged to another version of him, the one who pretended a gala speech could answer a dead man's questions. He left out the word map. He didn't leave out Lily's name. On the walk down, Springwood showed them the version of itself that sits between seasons, a breeze pretending to be on its best behavior, storefronts, trying to decide whether the tourists had left or just meant to. Lily didn't fill the quiet with chatter. She pointed every now and then to places that held a kind of map of their own. The library where she said the air smelled like brave people's paper. The corner bakery where the owner sometimes slipped her a day-old roll like it was a conspiracy of kindness. The skate park where, she said, she learned that falling was part of going fast. "What about you?" she asked eventually. "Where's your map?" Daniel almost said, "What do you mean?" But she'd asked it like she already knew the answer was somewhere he didn't check often enough. He told her about the attic at the Carter house, how the trunks smelled like cedar and ghosts. He told her about the envelope the lawyer had handed him, and the note on top in his grandfather's handwriting. "Not all keys are for locks." He didn't tell her about the other sentence, the one that had felt less like a puzzle and more like a wound. "If you're reading this, forgive me." They reached the old wharf just as a gull skimmed the surface of the water like a dare. The boards creaked the way they do in every memory of a place like this. Daniel stopped at the edge where one plank had gone missing. Lily looked for a path, not forward but below. "The map shows a break here," she said. "See? The key symbol doubles." She knelt, squinting through the slats. There, under the wharf, half hidden by a tangle of rope and the mean green of algae, was a paint mark the color of dried mustard. Not exactly a key shape, but a slash and a hook, like someone's idea of a shorthand. If you hadn't been looking for it, your eye would have skated right by. "Help me down," Lily said, like that was the most reasonable sentence to say with cold water licking at the pylons. "Absolutely not," he said, and then because he had already learned that Daniel Carter's absolutely not sometimes meant all right but carefully, he followed her down the sideways ladder of weathered beams. They landed on a ledge of rock that smelled like the last 100 tides. Up close, the paint mark made sense with the map's geometry. The doubled key meant look under, not unlock. Lily ran her finger along the rough wood until it snagged on a seam. "See this?" She curled a nail into the slit where 2 boards didn't quite meet. "There's something wedged." She tenderly. He braced himself as she pulled. A slip, a muttered, "Ow." Then a triumphant, "Got it." What she held could have been trash anywhere else. A rusted bottle cap, a nail, a token of nothing. But this was a disc, thin and dull, the size of a coin, with a faint etching that matched the key symbol's outline, like a child's drawing of a key had tried to become a circle. On the back, scratched into the metal, the number 1. "It's a marker." Lily said, breathless the way you get when someone taps a hidden door inside your day and you hear it answer. A sequence. How many? Daniel asked, squinting at the map. The key symbol appeared again by the lighthouse, again near a scribble that might have been a grove of trees, again by the outline of a cabin. The sequence wasn't neat, but it was intentional, like a breadcrumb trail left by someone who knew that future people would need hope measured out in small victories. 3 for the bay, she said, counting with her pencil. 1 at the lighthouse, 1 inland, maybe the old logging road, and 1 where this cabin would be. Would be? He echoed. It's not on any current map, she said, but my friend's granddad talks about an old Carter cabin from way back. Hunters used it. Weather chewed it up. How do you know all this? He asked, half in admiration, half in awe. I listen, she said. Like that explained everything. They climbed back up to the planks, Lily slipping the marker into a small zip pouch like it was already part of a collection. We should log it, she said, before we forget what the number means. He glanced at his phone. Sarah hadn't responded. The tide was turning fast, as a plan that doesn't wait for permission. He tried not to think of what he was supposed to be doing. He tried not to think of Maxwell, who always seemed to appear at the edges of things Daniel cared about, with a smile that had too many maneuvers loaded behind it. Lighthouse? Lily asked, reading his mind the way kids do when they aren't distracted by pretense. We should go before the light goes bad. It's safer on the causeway when the tide's low. The light doesn't go bad, he said, teasing. It just changes. Everything changes, she said. That's why we have maps. The path to the lighthouse was a ribbon of rock and concrete that years of salt had gnawed at. When the weather was in a forgiving mood, locals walked it for the view, pretending they didn't feel the pull of water on either side. Today the wind was a low conversation with itself. They walked single file, Lily in front, because she saw the world as if it were impatient to reveal itself. Tell me about the foundation, she said over her shoulder. Is it like a piggy bank for good deeds, or a vault for rich people guilt? He's a croving seeks of Neverlos. He's a life to recation the very one. He snorted. Ask softer questions. Why? If the foundation's niche is doing actual good, it won't mind, she said. Niche, the way a kid might say, dragon, fearless. My mom says some philanthropy is like a band-aid on a leak in a boat. Looks tidy, doesn't fix the thing that's sinking us. What does your mum do? He asked, curious about the person who had taught this kid to aim at the heart of things. She cleans offices, Lily said. Not embarrassed, not defiant, just true. Sometimes the people who work there leave free snacks out. She brings the apples home. The apples are good. He have the ranger as well. It is the best of a brand. They reached the base of the lighthouse. Its door braced shut, not with a lock, but a city notice that said, unsafe, in a font that had lost the argument before it started. Lily circled the foundation, scanning for the graffiti of the map's language. She found it low on the leeward side, a small, almost polite slash of the mustard paint, half hidden by lichens. Number? Daniel asked, and she laughed. I wish. She crouched, palms on the cold stone, and then she saw at the edge of a loose brick that wasn't loose yesterday or last year, but had been made to pretend it might be. Help? They pried, together. The brick sighed out of place like it had been waiting for hands instead of storms. Inside, a cavity just big enough for another coin-like marker. This one etched with the key symbol cleaner than the last, and stamped with the number 2. Someone had planned this stash well. Salt hadn't eaten the metal yet. Alongside it was a folded scrap of paper protected by waxed cloth. Careful, Daniel said, as if the word could keep time from touching it. Lily unfolded the paper. The handwriting wasn't his grandfather's. It was neater, almost scholarly, and at the bottom, 2 initials, S.W. Sarah Winters, Daniel said before his brain had time to run interference. Lily read aloud, the wind trimming her voice into something plain and perfect. If you're reading this, then patience has outrun denial. The key is not a key. It is a count, not of what we have, but of what we owe. They were quiet long enough to hear the little stones roll under the wall where the sea's last mood had left them. Daniel took the paper gently, scanning for any other marks or hidden hints. There was a faint watermark, a crest he recognized from old Foundation stationery. S.W. had used what she'd had close at hand. He imagined her hands steady, precise, folding the note, tucking it away inside the lighthouse like planting a flag that no one could see. Why would Sarah? He didn't finish. He didn't have to. Lily took the question and gave it shape. Maybe because she knew how this town forgets what it owes, she said. Maybe because she knew the next Carter would need a trail. He called Sarah. Voicemail. Left a message that was too vague and too honest. I found something you left for someone. I'm with Lily. We're safe. He didn't say where. Not yet. He didn't say what, because secrets said out loud at the wrong time can behave like storms. Lily tucked the second marker beside the first in her pouch. 2, she said. We're counting. And what do we owe exactly? Daniel asked, the question not rhetorical. She looked past him to the town that had happened around the Carter name, a town with new wings on old buildings, playgrounds built by donation plaques, streets that still had cracks where the nice shoes didn't step. We'll find out, she said. That's the adventure, right? He smiled because he wanted to, and because she made it easy. The wind shifted colder, less forgiving. They started back along the causeway, Lily counting under her breath like each step was a promise she could keep for both of them. By the time they reached the edge of the bay, Daniel's phone finally buzzed. A text from Sarah. Come to the office. Bring the map. A second later, another message. And Lily. No emoji. No frowny face. Just the kind of punctuation that sounded like a lighthouse's old lamp. Turning once, twice to say, this way. Office? Lily asked, reading upside down again. Office, he said, and then paused. You know you don't have to. I know, she said. That's why I want to. They walked toward the foundation building, a place that had been painted so many times the white felt permanent. Daniel noticed things he never had time to notice, how the entry ramp was too steep for some wheelchairs, how the donor wall listed names that read like a map of power rather than gratitude, how the receptionist smiled, the same smile at everyone but answered phone calls. First, if the voice on the other end had a certain zip code. Sarah met them in the doorway before either could make a case for anything. She looked exactly like someone who could hide a note in a lighthouse and not tell a soul. Grey hair tucked into a bun, eyes that saw both the person and the pattern, a cardigan that announced neither wealth nor apology. She hugged Lily first. I'm not a hugger, Lily said, already hugging back. I am, Sarah said, and then she turned to Daniel. You found number 2. You left it. I did. Why? The not so breathing the times of the Preston. She looked at him the way people only look at you if they've watched you grow from a kid who signed his name too big to a man who didn't sign anything without reading the footnotes. Because your grandfather asked me to. She didn't add, because he didn't trust himself to. She didn't have to. What is it? He asked. This count of what we owe? Sarah motioned them inside. Close the door, Daniel. Some conversations deserve walls. They sat in her office, which had art from local kids, and a ficus that had survived 3 winters longer than anyone expected. Sarah laid out a folder. Inside were copies of ledgers, microfilm printouts, scanned letters stamped with dates that felt like warnings. 1987, 1993, 2004. There were columns of numbers that told the truth in a language that looked like math but felt like an old song if you knew how to hear it. Transfers, allocations, gaps that weren't mistakes so much as choices. Your grandfather did good, Sarah said. He built things that mattered, but he also borrowed from futures that didn't have a vote yet. Lily leaned in like a detective in a paperback. Borrowed from who? From the town, Sarah said. From the people who weren't invited to the boardroom when decisions were made. Tax breaks dressed like generosity. Deals that promised jobs but forgot to mention the part where rents went up and the bus route didn't. Daniel felt the heat that comes when something you love asks you to love it honestly. And the map? He asked. The map is how he decided to pay it back, Sarah said. Not in speeches, not in checks with his name bigger than the amount. In a way that would force the next Carter to walk the town, to count the markers, to look people in the eye. He told me to make it impossible to finish from a desk. Did he finish it? Daniel asked. The count? No, Sarah said, and her voice did that thing grief does when it apologizes for a timeline it doesn't control. He got to 4. 4 what? Lily asked. 4 places, Sarah said. 4 promises. 4 starts. And we have 2, Lily said, touching the pouch at her hip. So we're catching up. Sarah smiled at her like you do at people who rescue your faith without making a speech about it. Yes, she said, you're catching up. Daniel looked at the map, then at the ledger, then at his hands. He had the sudden urge to do something impossible and exactly right, like stopping a tide with a sentence. What happens when we find them all? He asked. Then you'll have choices, Sarah said. And responsibilities. The will. She paused, measuring the weight of the word. Doesn't say who gets the money. It says who holds the key. He was no head, the Valerie. The key that isn't a key, Lily said, delighted by the paradox. Sarah nodded. Account. Of what we owe. A knock at the door interrupted the geometry of their moment. It was the receptionist, looking apologetic. Maxwell Burke is here to see you, she said to Daniel, the way you tell someone their past has arrived and it's wearing a tie. Lily's fingers found the edge of the table, not in fear but in focus. Daniel folded the map carefully, not like a secret but like a promise. He glanced at Sarah, and she met his look with the kind of courage that doesn't need to raise its voice. Send him in, Daniel said. He didn't know it yet, but the map would never again be a thing on paper. From this moment on, it would be a way of walking a decision, step by step, between what was easy to say and what was true to do. Maxwell Burke walked in like a handshake you couldn't refuse. Perfect charcoal suit, smile calibrated to read as benevolent on donor walls. He closed the door behind him without asking and glanced at Lily, then at Sarah, as if making a quiet ledger of who mattered and why. Daniel, he said, voice warm enough to fog glass. Been trying to catch you. Board slate needs your signature. Tomorrow's gala isn't going to MC itself. Hi, Maxwell, Daniel said. He didn't offer the map. He didn't offer anything. Maxwell's eyes flicked to the folded parchment anyway. The way men trained at power notice a corner of paper like it might bite. New? Project? Old one, Sarah said before Daniel could answer. She smiled like a librarian who had a better book waiting behind the desk. Maxwell's smile didn't change. I do love a retrospective. Speaking of, your grandfather left incomplete notes. I've been helping the foundation consolidate his legacy. Streamline. We don't need clutter getting in the way of impact. Clutter? Lily said, genuinely curious. Like numbers that don't add up? Maxwell looked at her as if a sparrow had learned to quote bylaws. And you are? Lily, she said. I ask hard questions. Charming. Maxwell turned back to Daniel. You've got a schedule, son. Leave the paper chasing to staff. Sarah kept her tone mild. Some paper is the only honest witness we have. Maxwell let it pass. Anyway, I'll send the documents. We'll finalize the niche language for Carter Springwood's public positioning. Opportunity at scale rolls off the tongue. Opportunity at scale for who? Lily asked. For the community, Maxwell said smoothly. We're all on the same team. Teams share the ball, Lily said. Daniel stood. Not aggressive, just decided. We'll review, Max, later. Maxwell read it correctly. He buttoned his jacket, offered a parting smile to Sarah that had too many decades inside it, and to Lily a paternal nod that didn't quite land. Don't be late to your own story, Daniel. He left. Silence filled the doorway like a breath you could stand inside. Sarah opened a drawer and placed a small key on the desk. Not the map's symbol, a real key, old and brass, teeth worn smooth by pockets and time. For the microfilm cabinet, she said. Town records, zoning hearings, old harbor maps. If you're following this trail, you'll want context that hasn't been streamlined. Lily leaned forward. What's next? Sarah tapped the map's inland scribble. The old logging road. If I had to guess, marker 3 is there. And then the cabin. Why didn't you just tell me all this? Daniel asked softly. Because you needed to walk it, Sarah said. And because if I'd handed you answers, men like Maxwell would claim them faster than tides take footprints. They borrowed a dusty binder from the cabinet maps traced from maps, a lineage of ink. The 1952 overlay showed a road that no longer had a name, running behind the ridge like a scar that knew when to hide. Next to it, in small script, someone had written, Carter Line Shack. Cabin, Lily said, triumphant. We're not imagining it. They left before lunch could become an excuse. The old road began as gravel, then quit pretending. Blackberry brambles snagged at their jeans. Sunlight cut through the tree line in columns, like a quiet cathedral that liked dirt under its nails. Lily walked point again, not to lead, but to listen. Birds, wind, the crack of something that might be a deer or a story testing its weight. They found marker 3 fixed under a rusted survey stake, another thin disc stamped 3, key etching sharper, protected in tar patch resin like someone had loved it enough to cheat the weather. Nearby, nailed eye level into a birch, a sliver of painted mustard that would have looked like an accident if not for the pattern they now knew by heart. 3, Lily said, slipping it into the pouch. Bay, lighthouse, road. Next is the cabin. The cabin arrived like a memory that refused to be bulldozed. Half-collapsed roof, stone chimney still proud, a door hanging at an angle that made no case for privacy, inside a table bowed with rot, and an old ledger fused to wood by rain and patience. Lily touched the edges like addressing an elder. The ledger lifted whole, surprising them both because someone once had wrapped its back in oilcloth. On the first readable page, neat columns, names, dates, amounts, not donations, restitutions, Harbour Displacement Fund, Lily read, finger tracing, rents offset, boat repair microgrants, bus route extension stipend. Each line bore a place and a person. Each had a small check mark next to some, a blank next to others, and a faint pencil X beside several unpaid. Daniel swallowed hard. My grandfather started paying it back, he said. The words a witness. And didn't finish, Lily said. Not to accuse, but to complete the math. Beneath the ledger, tucked in a split between boards, marker 4 weighted more worn, number pressed shallow. Alongside it, a strip of paper. If you made it here, you've earned the rest in daylight. To the hill. Count the oaks. S.W. Lily laughed, delighted. I like Sarah. Me too, Daniel said. He looked at the ledger's unpaid X's until they quit looking back like ghosts and started looking like work. On the ridge above the cabin, the oaks stood old and organized. 5th tree from the stone fence. A small tin box slept at the roots, wired to the far side where casual eyes wouldn't bother. Inside, marker 5. And a Polaroid turned sepia at the edges, Carter and Sarah Winters, much younger, standing in front of the lighthouse, both smiling like they'd decided to be brave the long way. On the back, in the same tidy hand. If I don't make it to 7, make him walk. He'll understand more with mud on his shoes. S.W. Case forms of the prisoners. Have are the last of the mound of the prisoners. Lily wiped her nose with the back of her wrist, not because she was sad, but because wind at the ridge does that. So, she said, we're at 5. Lighthouse was 2, cabin 4, the old road 3. We still need the grove by town, looks like a triangle of trees, and one more near the harbour mouth. Daniel nodded. Maxwell's going to keep pushing, he said. Then we'll keep walking, Lily said, counting what we owe. They started down the slope, the tin box back where they found it, the ledger wrapped again in its oilcloth and tucked inside Lily's backpack, like a fragile future. In town, a gala waited for a speech. Out here, a trail waited for 2 more markers, and a choice that wouldn't fit on any donor wall. By dusk, the town was slipping into its gala clothes, windows glowing, car doors thunking shut, the bay catching the last gold and refusing to let go. Daniel texted Sarah a simple update 5, and got back a single checkmark emoji that somehow felt like a blessing. Then he and Lily did the thing that makes sense only when you've committed to the long way around. They went back to the lighthouse. The causeway at night felt narrower, the water louder, 2 long lanes of black arguing under a grey sky. Lily walked with a small headlamp that made her look like an expedition of one. Night shows different shadows, she said, as if quoting a book she hadn't read yet. Sometimes the pattern needs dark. At the base, the brick they'd loosened earlier looked innocent again. Lily cupped the light along the stone skirt, tracing lichen, hairline cracks, places the sea had signed and resigned. The paint slashes repeat in a rhythm, she murmured. Not random. Daniel watched the beam sweep until it found the second mustard mark, this one so faint it could have been wishful thinking. Lily counted under her breath. 1, 2, 5, 8. She laughed softly. Fibonacci but lazy. Lazy? Whoever marked it wasn't trying to be precise, she said. Just suggestive. Like, here's the idea. Finish it with your feet. She followed the implied spacing to a low seam between stones. There. They knelt, hands cold against the damp. Not a cavity this time, but a thin strip of metal set flush with mortar, its edge raked to catch light only at night. Daniel ran a fingertip along it and felt etching, a shallow arrow, pointing not out to sea but toward town. Back? He asked. Through, Lily said, standing to sight along the arrow's line. It didn't point to streets or roofs. It pointed to the old beacon room, 5 stories up, where the glass panes were now dust-matted eyes. The UN safe notice on the door looked more personal in the dark. Inside, the circular stair was a spine of rust. Lily tested the first step. It held. They climbed slow, each footfall a decision. Halfway up, a gust bullied through a missing pane and sang a low, unkind note in the iron. Lily stopped, hand on the rail, not afraid, listening. "What do you hear?" Daniel asked. "Wind," she said, "and something that wants to be a pattern." She clicked off the headlamp. The night settled like a hand on their shoulders. Through the open panes, the town's lights blinked, pier lights, a church window, the square's string bulbs. The old lighthouse glass, filthy and fractured, caught them and bent them into shards. Lily breathed a yes under her breath. Someone used the town as a code. How? She pointed, eyes adjusting. Glass pane 32 crack like a lightning fork? When you line it with the pier's end light and the church spire, the crack points inland, not toward the big houses past them, toward the triangle of trees on the map. Daniel felt his chest do the thing it did when something elegant made a fool of cynicism. Why at night? Because day flattens it, she said. Too much light makes all directions look polite. They reached the lantern room. The mechanism had been gutted years ago, but the circular catwalk still held. Lily pressed her palm to the glass, aligning the broken lines with the town's small constellations. There, she said, and Daniel saw it. A composite arrow no one would notice unless they were looking for a conversation between a cracked pane and a stubborn town. He took out his phone to snap a photo, then lowered it. He didn't want a screen to clean the mess too much. "We have 5, he said, "and a direction to 6. And a problem," Lily added, nodding past him. A flashlight beam wobbled along the causeway like a question with a badge. "Security?" Daniel asked. "Or a volunteer who read the sign?" Lily said. "Either way. Let's go." They descended with the care of people who respect old metal. At the base, the beam grew steadier, more official. A voice called, "Hello?" Framed in backlight, a man in a windbreaker raised a hand. "Town safety," he said, friendly but trained. "You folks can't be in there after dark. It's unsafe," Lily finished, deadpan. Sign was very persuasive. The man smiled despite himself. He looked at Daniel, then looked again, recognizing the Carter silhouette the way you recognize a landmark. He didn't fawn. He didn't scold. "Do me a favor," he said, gentle as gravel. "Next time, bring a second flashlight." "We will," Daniel said. He meant it. Back on shore, the night felt like it had told them a secret and would wait patiently for them to prove they deserved it. They cut through side streets, past the barber that still closed on Mondays because time had let it, past the diner where a pie turned slowly in its glass case like the second hand of a sweeter clock, toward the stand of trees that looked like any other after dark, unless you knew to watch for the way the streetlights painted the ground. The grove wasn't a forest so much as a pause 7 oaks in a triangle, a pocket of hush between houses built by money that loved porches. Lily's headlamp returned, narrow and useful. She paced the perimeter, then the angles, counting off like a drummer. "Fibonacci again," she grinned. Not lazy this time. She found the paint just a whisper on a knee-high rock at the triangle's point. A thin wire secured a small tin under the rock lip. She slid it free. Inside, marker 6, the key etching crisp, the number sure, and a cardstock square stamped by an old office ink pad with the foundation crest, corners softened by waiting. On it a sentence, "Not charity repair." Lily turned the card over, then again, as if more words might tumble out if she believed hard enough. "Repair," she said. "That's a different niche." "How?" "It is," Daniel said, and felt, for the first time, a line between the speech he was supposed to give and the one he needed to. He imagined saying it into a room paid to applaud. Not charity repair. He imagined the way Maxwell's smile would calcify. "7 will be near the harbor mouth," Lily said, matter of fact. where things come and go and sometimes don't come back. And then? Daniel asked. Then the will, Lily said, not as a threat or a prize, but as a turning. Then you decide how to count. They walked back toward town lights, the marker 6 in her pouch, the word repair in his pocket like a small, heavy truth. At the corner, someone had chalked a hopscotch grid on the sidewalk. Lily hopped it without breaking stride, landing on 10, arms out for balance, laughing into the dark like a promise. Morning sharpened the bay into clean lines. The tide ran out like a breath held too long. Daniel and Lily headed for the harbor mouth, where the breakwater split the water's argument into 2 lanes. Fishing crews moved with the quiet choreography of people who'd learned respect from weather. Where would you hide a promise, Lily asked, if you needed it to endure salt and time? Inside something that already belongs here, Daniel said, scanning. Not under stones with the surge. They turned into dice. Not on posts the ocean ate from the bottom up. He looked at the tide boards, measuring planks bolted to a piling, numbers painted high to low. There. Up close, the bottom rungs were a crust of barnacles. Lily crouched, found a spot where growth stopped cleanly, a rectangle the size of a matchbox. Fresh scrape, she said. Not today, but not years. A small brass plate sat flush with the wood, its edges disguised by old paint. Daniel worked a thin knife under it. The plate lifted. Beneath, a cavity, and in it, marker 7. The key etching was deeper, the number almost proud. Wrapped beside it, a narrow strip of vellum sealed with wax. He cracked the seal. 4 words, inked with a slow, careful hand. Bring the count home. Lily exhaled like a runner at a finish line. 7, she said. We did it. We started it, Daniel said. The breakwaters stretched away, the town behind them waiting like a question. He pictured Sarah's ledgers, the unpaid X's, the card that said, repair. He pictured Maxwell's tidy phrases. He heard his grandfather's note. Not all keys are for locks. They took the causeway back through gulls, arguing over nothing. Outside the foundation, a delivery truck idled gala supplies. Vases, branded banners, a podium that would soon turn sentences into scenery. Sarah met them in the hallway, saw Lily's grin, saw the pouch, and simply nodded as if somewhere an old lighthouse lamp had just gone around once. In my office, she said. Close the door. They laid the 7 markers on a blotter in a clean arc. Sarah touched each one like reading Braille. He wanted you to feel this weight, she murmured. Metal remembers. What does bring the count home mean? Daniel asked. Sarah pulled a thin envelope from her file-stack cream paper, embossed crest, saved for a day that had finally arrived. Inside, a single page. An addendum to the will. Witnessed and stamped, she slid it across. The will doesn't name you beneficiary, she said. It names you custodian. The markers are proof you walked the town. With them, you can execute the repairs without board pre-approval. A temporary power sunset in 12 months. Your grandfather bought time for your backbone. Lily's eyes went bright. So we can start paying the unpaid lines. Yes, Sarah said, quietly, directly. Harbor displacement, bus routes, leaky roofs the grants skipped because the form wasn't pretty. A knock. The receptionist again, voice reluctant. Maxwell's back. With counsel. Of course he is, Sarah said softly. She gathered the markers into a cloth roll, handed it to Lily. If anyone asks, you're holding the library's coin collection. To Daniel. Remember, the law is on your side for once. Maxwell entered with a lawyer in a navy suit whose smile had billable hours behind it. Good news, Maxwell said to the room, like a toast no one had requested. We've finalized our gala remarks. Emphasis on innovation and scale. Daniel didn't sit. We're changing the speech, he said. Not charity repair. He let the words find their own weight on the carpet. The lawyer's brows knit. And the board. The will names me custodian for 12 months, Daniel said, steady. I'll be executing earmarked repairs per the attached ledgers. The board will be informed, not asked. Maxwell's smile thinned, but stayed on his face out of habit. Optics matter, Daniel. Truth matters more, Daniel said. If optics come along, they can buy a ticket. The lawyer reached for the document. Sarah slid a copy across and kept the original, a small, unblinking act. You'll find the witnesses in order, she said, recorded with the town clerk. Microfilm cabinet 13. Maxwell glanced at Lily, then back at Daniel. You're going to let a child steer? I'm going to let the Count steer, Daniel said. She just helps me read the map. Silence did that bright thing where it becomes a border. Maxwell took a breath as if to argue, then weighed the will's language and found fewer handholds than he expected. Very well, he said finally, tone changing to something cooler. But donors expect vision. They'll get repairs, Daniel said. They can call that vision when it's fashionable. When they left, Sarah allowed herself one small smile. You'll make enemies, she said. I think I already did, Daniel said. Good, Lily said. Then we know we're not lost. They unrolled the map on Sarah's desk one last time. 7 small circles now lived inside its lines, the kind of proof that doesn't photograph well and doesn't need to. The town outside kept moving forklifts, birds, a kid dragging a stick along a fence for the sound of it. Inside, 3 people stood over old paper and decided to make a promise hold. Tonight, Sarah said, say it in the room the money thinks it owns. Daniel nodded. Not charity repair. Lily tapped the ledger with a pencil. And tomorrow morning, she said, we start paying the X's, as on the 10s in the Place Forêt Green. The gala turned the community centre into a mirror lights, linen, a string quartet trying to make small talk sound expensive. Donor names floated on acrylic, like ice without the melt. Daniel stepped through the service entrance with Lily and Sarah because some doors tell the truth faster. In the green room, a framed photo of Carter Carter watched from 1994. Groundbreaking smile, shovel in dirt not yet forgiven. Sarah set a slim accordion folder on the table, its tabs labeled in a librarian's hand: harbour, transit, housing, clinics, schools. How did the map start? Daniel asked, eyes on his grandfather's younger face. Not the will, the walking. That's his man. Sarah folded her glasses, a ritual before telling something that matters. Your grandfather came to my kitchen one winter with cold in his bones. I couldn't blame on the weather. He'd just signed a deal that would bring jobs, yes, but push families inland like the tide was suddenly rent. He said, I can't unbuild this. Help me count what I owe. I told him counting is only useful if you pay. He said, then make it so the next one has to walk. Lily sat on the edge of a battered chair, swinging one foot. So you hit markers? We, Sarah corrected, eyes kind. He placed some. I placed some. And we argued like friends do when they both want the story to end better than they deserve. She passed Daniel a bundle of photocopies, his grandfather's notes in a cramped, urgent script. Margins full of math and names. At the bottom of one page, a line that wavered and held, not charity repair. A knock, not polite, possessive. Maxwell walked in without waiting, the navy suit lawyer at his flank and a third man in tow. A silver-haired donor whose last name serviced a wing. 5 minutes to remarks, Maxwell said. We tightened the language. Catalytic capital for scalable solutions. Donors love alliteration. We're not using it, Daniel said. The donor blinked, then smiled the way some men smile right before they order another drink. Young Mr. Carter, your grandfather and I, were allies, Daniel finished. I know. He built many things with you. He also left a count. I'm finishing it. Maxwell's voice dropped the velvet. You'll risk alienating the board. I'll risk telling the truth in a room built by it, Daniel said. He held up the will addendum. The law is clear. I'm custodian for 12 months. Repairs begin tomorrow. The donor's gaze slid to Sarah, looking for a weak link. He found a spine instead. We can publish the ledgers, she said softly, or we can quietly fix the X's. Either way, the count comes due. Genreased tens of cases funny and selve. And now, in faith then rebroom, in the Davilites, something in the donor's posture shifted a memory, maybe, of a first check he wrote before he learned to say the word impact without blushing. If this is about repair, he said, show us receipts. We will, Daniel said. Not the kind that buy applause, the kind that buy bus passes and roofs that don't leak. Maxwell saw the room tilting. He pivoted. Then at least let us frame it, he said quickly. New initiative, future-facing. Carter commitments. Lily coughed into her sleeve. Or we could not rename paying people back. The stage manager poked in with a headset and the high-wire calm of someone who wrestles chaos for a living. You're up, she told Daniel. Mike too. Don't touch the antenna. At the dais, the podium looked taller under lights. Daniel's face found itself on screens in the corners. He could hear forks surrendering to plates. He could feel Maxwell in the wings, thumbs in his pockets like holsters. He looked at Sarah and Lily in the front row, two anchors disguised as people. Then he began. I rewrote this speech, he said. No preamble, no joke to make the medicine sweet. Because the town I love handed me a map that doesn't fit on a donor wall. He told them about the markers without telling them where. He told them about his grandfather's winter confession and Sarah's kitchen table. He told them about ledgers that spelled the word O in numbers and names. He didn't say charity. He said repair. He didn't say legacy. He said responsibility. We're going to spend the next 12 months paying for the promises we already made, he said. Harbor displacement stipends, bus route extensions, rental bridges for families pushed by our progress, clinic grants for roofs that leak when press releases don't. A murmur ran through the room, not disapproval calculation adjusting to a new math. Daniel nodded toward the back where maintenance staff listened from the doorway, like people who've learned speeches arrive after mops. If you want scale, he said. Scale repair. Has naughty tozenais. Maxwell stepped forward an inch, but the stage manager's hand on his sleeve said, not yet, in a language of cues. The donor at the wing folded his arms, then unfolded them, a private compromise. After the applause standing in patches, genuine in others, Daniel stepped off into a corridor that smelled like flowers trying too hard. Maxwell cornered him with the lawyer already opening a leather folio. You made a splash, Maxwell said lightly. Investors will need assurances. Here are mine, Daniel said, handing him a printed one-page. Line items with percentages next to each repair category, pulled from Sarah's tabs. Transparent. Auditable. 12 months. Then, we talk about the future you keep branding. The lawyer scanned, hunting for leverage. This doesn't bind donors, he said. It binds us, Daniel said. They can come along or get out of the way. Lily tugged his sleeve, eyes tilted toward the lobby. A woman in a Navy housekeeper uniform stood just inside the door, wringing a folded paper in both hands like it might release steam. Lily threaded through. Daniel followed. Mr. Carter, the woman said, accent softening the consonants. I clean the clinic on 3rd. Roof, she pointed up. When it rains, the medicine gets spots. Sarah had joined them, already pulling a card. What's your name? She asked. Mariella, and I've come in the pres, and de ser elites ponts of lighters conting des drief. Mariella, can you show me the leak tomorrow? 9A. M. Mariella's relief was quieter than tears. Yes, she said. Thank you. Lily grinned at Daniel. Receipt number 1. They left the gala early because sometimes the bravest thing you can do is refuse another canapé. In the quiet of Sarah's office, Sarah laid a final paper on the desk. Not a ledger, a letter, sealed and brittle at the edges, older than the addendum, addressed in an unfamiliar hand. To D. When you're ready. He broke the seal. Inside, a single page, ink, run in one corner, not by tears but by a cup set carelessly and lifted quickly, a life detail you only notice when you miss someone. The signature at the bottom stopped him cold. My mother, he whispered. Sarah's voice gentled. She left it with your grandfather before she died. He asked me to give it to you when you weren't angry at paper anymore. He read, not for anyone else's ears, not even the room's. His mother told him what the Carter name had bought her and what it had cost. She told him she loved the version of him that would walk, not just talk. She told him to mistrust men who used the word optics before they learned the word neighbor. At the very end, the line that stitched the night to the map. Not all keys are for locks. Some are for counting what we owe each other. He folded the letter carefully, an act of keeping. Okay, he said to no one and everyone. Tomorrow we start. Tomorrow we continue, Lily corrected, delight softening into resolve. We're at 7, Sarah echoed, and for a moment the number felt like more than a count. It felt like a vow. They began at dawn, list in hand. Mariella met them at the clinic on 3rd. The roof above the pharmacy shelves wore water rings like tired halos. Sarah measured, called a contractor who'd fixed the library without a press release, and wrote the first repair authorization from the addendum account. Receipt 1, Lily said, snapping a picture not for socials, for records. They moved harbor, transit, housing like a small team trying to outrun an old storm. At the docks, a fisherman with a scar-like punctuation across his cheek signed for a micro-grant to mend an engine cracked by a winter freeze 3 years back. He shook Daniel's hand, the way men do when pride and gratitude both show up, and refused to bicker. "Your granddad started this," he said. "Didn't think the rest would come." Daniel nodded like apology could be a muscle if you used it. At the bus depot, Lily listened while the route planner explained how a line had died when a development thrived. Sarah slid over a rough draft. Restore Route 6 loop past Ridge and Orchard, evenings and Sundays. The planner hesitated. "Funding?" Daniel laid the custodian letter on the table. "For 12 months, he said. "After that, the town will wonder how it ever lived without it." By noon, Maxwell moved to slow the tide. A bank compliance email arrived with the neutrality of a guillotine. Interim hold, pending board review. Sarah was already dialing. "Section 4B, she told the manager, calm as a lighthouse lamp. "Addendum supersedes board veto for enumerated repairs. Clerk stamp, page 2. A beat. The hold lifted. Lily grinned. "We have a map. They have delays." Between stops, Daniel detoured to town hall with microfilm cabinet key in pocket. Cabinet 13 smelled like dust that had read everything and learned not to brag. On the spool, a zoning hearing from a decade back. Voices thin with tape age. A man Maxwell arguing to rationalize bus coverage to high-impact corridors. Sarah's recorded rebuttal. Impact that leaves people behind is just a longer word for leaving. The vote. 4-3. The cut passed. Lily, peering over his shoulder, didn't gloat. She underlined names. "We'll invite them to the ribbon when we restore it," she said. "They can practice the word neighbor." By late afternoon, a courier dropped an unmarked envelope at the foundation front desk. Inside, photocopies, donor memos, PR decks, Carter commitments splashed across slides Maxwell had mocked up overnight. Taglines: "A fresh brand for a future-minded legacy." A line circled in red: "Roll out before Daniel defines narrative." "He's trying to rename repair as innovation," Daniel said, equal parts weary and amused. "Names are cheap," Sarah replied. "Receipts are loud." That evening, they walked the ridge behind the old cabin because Lily said thinking works better with dirt underfoot. Springwood spread below porches, cranes, laundry lines like prayers. Daniel read his mother's letter again in the last light and found the part he hadn't let himself absorb. Don't spend your life answering a room that would rather be flattered than useful. They made a plan on the hood of Sarah's car, a weekly ledger published to the foundation site, actual numbers, anonymized names where needed, lines struck through as X's became checks, a community meeting every Friday, not speeches, sign-ups, a hotline for leaks, literal and otherwise. Lily drew a fast flowchart with arrows and a box that simply read, "Listen." When they returned to the office, a message waited from the donor with the wing. "If this is repair, my family wants in." Quietly. Attached, a pledge letter earmarked for transit and clinics. No branding, no stage. Lily high-fived the air. "One down," she said. "Optics, learning English." But the night wasn't done. A text from a blocked number pinged Daniel's phone. "If you want the rest of the count, check the cabin floorboard under the ledger nails. Bring light." No signature. Lily lifted an eyebrow. "Trap?" Sarah nodded. "Probably. Also, information." They grabbed 2 flashlights. Back at the cabin, the oaks held the dark like a secret they respected. Inside, the ledger space looked undisturbed unless you'd been here before. Lily found the dull flare of new metal, a nail not quite weathered. She pried it gently. Beneath, a narrow void held a roll of thin paper, wrapped in oilskin, stitched to a string that trailed into the floor seam, a crude trip alarm. "Cute," Lily said, cutting the thread before easing the paper free. Unrolled, it was not a map but a list, a back ledger, Sarah whispered. Names matched to companies, matched to expedites, introductions, and one recurring phrase, bridge, with money amounts beside it, off-books favors that greased projects while shoving people. At the bottom, initials MB. Lily's face went very still. "Maxwell," she said, like turning a key. "Or someone signing his name on shadows." Sarah cautioned. "We don't accuse with secrets. We verify in daylight. Has weld another snow at the tentally? I was weld another snow. With the live?" Daniel looked at the list, then at the 7 markers, then at the town. He could feel tomorrow tightening its laces. "Friday community meeting," he said. "We show the repair ledger, we invite stories, and we publish the pieces we can prove." "And the bridge list?" Lily asked. "We pull every permit," Sarah said. "We match the dates. We ask who was asked to move and who profited. If it's true, we don't whisper." "Aye," Lily nodded, satisfaction edged with fury. "Race to Springwood," she said softly, as if naming the next leg. Before they brand it out from under us, they walked back under a sky that had decided to be clear. At the edge of town, someone had propped a hand-lettered sign in a flower box. "Not charity repair." The paint dripped a little. Imperfect. Alive. Tomorrow they would have to hold a room, fend off a PR rollout, and keep the count from becoming a slogan. Tonight they had flashlights, a ledger, a back ledger, and a map that had taught them how to walk. Friday's community meeting started with metal chairs and ended up standing room only. No stage, no spotlights. Just a rolling whiteboard and a microphone that squeaked until the stage manager from the gala wandered in on her day off and fixed it with a twist only she knew. Daniel opened with numbers, not adjectives. Sarah flipped tabbed folders like a card trick that always ended in receipts. On the board, Lily drew 2 columns, X owed and repaired. Underneath, a third, stories. People wrote their names, not to perform to be counted. A fisherman from Dock 7, engine grant arrived, boat floats, so do 6 families who depend on it. A bus driver, Route 6 comes back Sunday nights. Kids will stop walking home in the dark. Mariella from the clinic, no more drip over antibiotics. She handed Sarah a photo of the patched roof like it was a diploma. Maxwell arrived midway with the Navy suit lawyer and a PR assistant wheeling a flat screen that said, "Carter Commitments." He waited for a pause and stepped forward with a smile that wanted to be mistaken for help. "We're excited to support these stories," he said smoothly. "In fact, the foundation is launching a new, future-facing." Sarah clicked the flat screen off at the power strip. It made a tiny surrender noise. The room laughed kindly, tiredly. "We're not branding a promise," she said. "We're paying it." Maxwell's jaw worked, then settled. "Be that as it may, custodian authority is ambiguous. The board can read," Daniel said, holding up the addendum. "So can the town clerk." Which is how, an hour later, they all ended up at town hall under a ceiling fan that creaked like an old truth. The clerk, Miss D'Angelo, produced a metal box from the records vault, its brass corners dark with honest work. She set it down like she'd been waiting for this day since the first marker went in the lighthouse. "The will's addendum references proof of count," she said, pushing her glasses up. 7 tokens, logged by my office when they were first placed. She glanced at Sarah, an old conspirator's smile flickering and gone. "Show me." Lily unrolled the cloth pouch. 7 markers, thin, dull, etched, caught the fluorescent light and refused to sparkle. Miss D'Angelo checked each against a ledger that smelled like staplers and courage. "Numbers, locations, dates placed," she said, tapping her pen. "All match." Maxwell leaned in, voice low. "And this entitles Mr. Carter to—" "What exactly?" Miss D'Angelo slid a second envelope from the box, wax seal unbroken, label in the same careful hand as the lighthouse note. "Upon proof of count." She held it until the room went quiet in that civic way that starts as manners and ends as history, then passed it to Daniel. He broke the seal. Inside, a legal directive, notarized the year before Carter died. The twist wasn't a surprise so much as a relief that someone had planned for human nature. "Read it," Lily whispered. Daniel did. "Upon presentation of all 7 markers," he read aloud, "custodial authority extends to the release of the repair escrow funds held apart from the Foundation's general endowment, restricted to enumerated obligations and expiring 12 months from first disbursement. Oversight. Town clerk and an independent auditor selected by the Public Library Board." Maxwell blinked. "A second fund?" He turned to Sarah. "You hid money?" Sarah didn't flinch. "We preserved it, away from optics." Miss D'Angelo turned the page. "There's more. Board consent is waived for repair escrow disbursements that directly satisfy line items logged before my death. Any attempt to rebrand or aggregate these disbursements as new initiatives shall forfeit matching privileges set aside in Section 7. She looked up. Translation, call it Carter commitments. Lose the match. The PR assistant very quietly unplugged the flat-screen cart. The Navy suit lawyer cleared his throat and tried a new angle. Auditor selection by a library board. That's irregular. Exactly, Miss D'Angelo said. School boards are too political. Church councils are too particular. The library remembers everyone and sells nothing. Lily grinned. Also, the library has the best snacks. Maxwell regrouped, professional reflex clicking into a lower gear. Even if the escrow exists, we must consider reputational risk. Publishing back ledgers if they're inaccurate. About that, Sarah said, sliding a folder forward. Inside, matched permit dates, wire confirmations, and a tidy chart Lily had drawn with arrows that didn't gloat. We verified what we can verify. The rest we've handed to the auditor, not to the court of opinion. Miss D'Angelo initialed each page like a slow drum. Repairs begin Monday, she said. Auditor selection by Wednesday. Weekly public posts at the library and online. Questions go to this office. Complaints go to the same place. Maxwell's smile didn't know where to land. He reached, at last, for sentiment. Carter was my friend. He believed in scale. Daniel nodded. He also believed in receipts. He made me walk. Silence. Then chairs scraped as the town began standing up not to leave, but to stand for what had just been made real. On the clerk's counter, someone set a handwritten sign, "Bring the count home." It stayed there like a benediction stapled to a to-do list. Outside, the evening smelled like rain and hot pavement. Lily tipped the markers into her palm and weighed them one last time. So the key really wasn't a key, she said. It was 7 small, heavy yeses. 7 and counting, Sarah said, eyes on the street where Route 6 would soon run again. Daniel folded the directive and the addendum into a single stubborn packet. Monday, he said. Clinics, buses, harbour, roofs, auditor, library board co-signer, and a public line item ledger that says who we paid and why. And if Maxwell tries a rebrand? Lily asked. Daniel smiled without teeth. Then we let the library drag him with footnotes. They walked back toward the foundation, past a kid chalking a fresh hopscotch. The numbers went to 10, then 12, then off the sidewalk entirely, as if the game had finally decided it didn't need permission to keep going. Monday didn't wait for anyone's coffee. The auditor, the library board, picked Asha Patel, a stone-quiet CPA who'd balanced a dozen messy municipal ledgers without a press tour, arrived at 8 a.m. with a notebook, a scanner, and a sentence that sounded like a vow. I don't do sides, I do numbers. They started where the rain had started roofs. Mariella led Asha up the clinic stairs while a contractor unspooled tar paper like a black ribbon. Downstairs, Sarah stacked invoices in order of damp to dry. Lily labeled folders with a code that made more sense than any acronym ever had. R1, R2, R3, roof by roof until the list became a map of relief. At the transit office, the planner taped a new schedule to the glass. Route 6 restored evenings and Sundays. Someone took a picture. No one posed. Asha asked for source docs. The planner slid over the spreadsheets with a sheepish smile. I never thought anyone would ask for these with good news. By noon, the Foundation's website, white page, black type, no swirl, published the first weekly ledger. Category, amount, date, receipt. Anonymous, where needed. Uneuphemized everywhere. At the bottom, a line Lily insisted on. Not charity repair. The library printed it and thumbtacked it between the book club flyer and a bake sale that taught the word humble how to be delicious. Maxwell tried a counter-move that afternoon, an email blast previewing Carter commitments with a soft-focus photo of a child running down a sunny hallway whose floor had never leaked. It landed with a thud. The donor with the wing replied all with a single link to the public ledger and 3 words, "This looks better." At Town Hall, Miss D'Angelo posted a notice. Repair escrow disbursement #7 confirmed. The paper curled slightly at the edges in the humidity, then flattened like it wanted to be permanent. In her window, a small dish of butterscotch appeared with a handwritten label. Take one, say thanks to the bus driver. The many 7 dozens rafted 2000 definers. What is what of the sea to the green round? By midweek, Asha matched the bridge list against permits, transfers, and a trail of small favors that had pushed big shapes. She did not perform outrage. She drew lines. When the lines made a picture, she handed it to Miss D'Angelo with a note. Referrals, ethics, and DA. No press, no fireworks. Just a municipal machine doing what people forget it can do. Maxwell asked for a meeting. He came alone, without the navy suit, just a man who'd played politics long enough to know when a boardroom had chosen a different word. He stood in Sarah's office, hat literally in hand, like he understood metaphor now. I won't fight repairs, he said. I lost the plot. He's not one of their refined side. Sarah's look was neither cruel nor warm. Help, then, she said simply. No speeches. Show up with checks that don't need your name on them. He nodded. Understood. After he left, Lily exhaled. Do we forgive him? Huh. We keep receipts, Sarah said. Forgiveness is a longer story. Friday night, the community meeting felt less like a meeting and more like a market where the currency was follow-through. A mason held up a photo of a repaired chimney with the pride of a surgeon. A bus rider explained how arriving home before midnight changes a body. The fisherman from Dock 7 brought chowder that tasted like a new engine. People stayed after, stacking chairs, leaving behind the kind of quiet that only happens when a room was used well. Daniel waited till the end, then asked Asha to step forward. Auditor's report, he said, half joking. Asha tapped her notebook. Controls are improving. Escrow releases track. Backledger matches enough to warrant referrals. Keep publishing. Keep walking. Lily tugged his sleeve. Library? She asked. They crossed the square where chalk hopscotch had grown into a network numbers, climbing past the curb, around the bench, up to the base of the war memorial, then simply continuing in a dotted line, as if the town itself had decided rules were just practice. Inside the library, between gardening for small yards and zoning for humans, a new display glowed gentle under a lamp. 7 thin markers in a shadow box, a copy of the lighthouse note, a title card set in clear type, the count we brought home. Below it, a smaller card in Lily's neat printing. A map is just a dare you answer, with your feet. They stood without talking. Sarah's hand found the display glass like a blessing you make without religion. Miss D'Angelo, off duty and somehow still on the clock of decency, wandered over and set a small brass key on the shelf. Microfilm 13, she said. People will ask. Let them learn how towns work. He was right into the speak. On the walk back, the lighthouse cut a darker line against a sky that promised weather, then thought better of it. Daniel thumbed the crease of his mother's letter in his pocket and felt, not weight, but shape the way a sentence can become your posture. I keep thinking about niche, Lily said suddenly, grinning at how fancy the word sounded in her mouth. Everyone wants one. Maybe ours is boring on purpose. Boring how? Daniel asked. Counting, she said. Paying, fixing leaks, moving buses, telling the truth like it's a habit instead of a moment. He laughed, and it came out lighter than he expected. That's our niche, he said, and have to get the fine for rusting braced. They ended where the map had started, back in the community center's side room, with the table and the stubborn parchment. It didn't look smaller now. It looked finished and unfinished, like a book worth rereading because you didn't notice how many chapters were about people you didn't see the first time. Daniel laid the addendum and the directive beside it. Sarah added the week's receipts. Lily drew a small arrow in pencil at the edge of the paper where there was only white space. For whoever comes next, she said, so they know the map keeps going. He glanced at the window. Outside, the evening gathered itself. A bus sighed to a gentle stop. Somewhere, a roof didn't drip. At the harbor, an engine started like a chest catching a breath it had been holding since winter. The lighthouse, still dark, did what old structures do when they can't do their first job anymore. It gave the town a shape to measure itself against. Daniel pressed his palm flat on the map. Not charity, he said, and heard his grandfather, his mother, Sarah, the clerk, the planner, the mason, Mariella, the bus driver, the fisherman, all the voices that had walked the lines with him. Repair, Lily finished, and the word didn't echo. It landed. They turned out the light. Outside, the chalk numbers kept going, off the sidewalk and into the dark, daring the next pair of feet to try.